Firecrackers, and we are streaming live on our Facebook page. You can join us live there. Okay, now to the topic we have at hand, that is the Economic Stabilization Bill and what to expect. So, since President Bola Tinubu has assumed government, he has made a lot of promises and he has been doing a lot of things, but a lot of Nigerians we would not say they are really impressed, because a lot of things that are going on are not exactly translating to standard of living. And for an average Nigerian, if whatever policy that is taken is not translating to standard of living, they don't see it as something to be taken seriously. It's just that it is assumed that the president is trying to make them suffer needlessly, unnecessarily. So now with this introduction of Economic Stabilization Bill, which is about to be sent to the National Assembly, what are the things we are supposed to expect from this?
Okay, thank you very much, Irevami. For this bill, honestly speaking, I think it's a good move. And I also know that it's one of the byproducts of the activities of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, headed by Taiwo Gundele, this tax guy from Pricewaterhouse. You know, the guy is doing Taiwo, that's his name. He's doing a very good job, and you know he has appeared in several programs in the past. And he has been promising that people should just give them some time for them to come up with their various recommendations to government. And this is one major one that they have done. And thankfully, the FEC has, approved it. And the government is going to send it to the National Assembly for enactment and all that. See, that bill covers a whole lot of things in the economy. In fact, covers the critical areas of the economy that when eventually it is signed into law, if it is approved by the Senate and the House of Rep and it's signed into law, people will begin to see the effect almost immediately. It covers the idea behind it is, one, to make life easy for people, two, to generate more income, okay? And three, to put pressure off the naira dollar rate, because our economy is so heavily dependent on FX. All of these hardships that people are going through today is as a result of the sudden change in FX rates in Nigeria. Every part of the economy is affected. And that's why the common man is actually, is growing under the effect of these effects. You understand? So by the time these things are passed into law and they begin to begin to execute them, we're going to begin to see a lot of changes. And if you want us, maybe later we begin to look at those various components of that bill, and you will see that indeed that they will be able to affect the common man ultimately, particularly this FX rate that has become so like a Frankenstein monster that is so untamable. But some of these measures that this bill is addressing or is intending to address will ensure that at least we'll try to curb this galloping increase in the FX rate. That's my own opinion. Okay,
all right. Thank you very much for that. And now to Dr. Samuel Ishinaike. What are your thoughts on the Economic Stabilization Bill? What do you think the Nigerians stand to gain from the implementation of this, if it is approved by the National Assembly?
Thank you. I want us to draw our mind back. This is not the first time as a country that we are having an economic stabilization policy. If you recall, in the early days of Ibrahim Babangida, I think about 1986 or so, there was an economic stabilization policy, that time openly empowered by the International Monetary Fund. To the same economic policy about and was abandoned midway.
Your audio
Well,
feed. Could you please help us check over there? We cannot hear you.
I'm
Okay.
talking very loud,
All
and
right. We
my
can hear you now.
system
Please
is.
go ahead.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I am. Please go
Hello?
ahead. Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm only saying that this is not the first time the country is coming up with economic stabilization policy. I recall that in the days of Abraham Babangida, about 1986 or so, there was also an economic stabilization policy empowered by the International Monetary Fund then. But this time around, I think this economic stabilization policy is a product or outcome of a committee set up by the federal government, which is the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. And if you look at what we are hearing, although the details of the bill is not out, but what we are hearing is that the bill is more of a tax relief bill to reduce taxes and to see how those taxes can bring about reduction in inflation, can bring about poverty alleviation and job creation, and also maybe to promote export and so on and so forth. Well, the objectives may be laudable. The objective of the bill, whether you call it economic stabilization bill or you call it tax reform bill, the objective may be laudable. But what about the policy that will bring about attainment of this objective? From what we are hearing, they are not different from what we have been saying or what the government has been doing over the years. Inflation reduction, reduce tax, income tax, reduce this without considering the transmission mechanism. The inflation rate now is very high. So the amount of tax reduction that will bring down inflation is not going to be easy, because there's a lot of complication in the economic system now. What we are facing today is not what fiscal policy and monetary policy can resolve, because the problem is now more structural than fiscal and monetary policy. That is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that. So if I'm to go by what Dr. Ishonaike said, the issue in Nigeria is not that we don't have good laws. We have very good laws, but the problem is always with the implementation. If it is there and no one is making use of it, or it is just completely ignored. So should we be asking the question that we should be asking now, should it be that how do we hold the government accountable in ensuring that these laws, all the laws that we have, however good they might be, to ensure that it is working for us? Is that the question we're supposed to be asking now?
Yeah, thank you again, Rebami. It's part of the question, but again, I would say that I have more confidence in this particular attempt than in the previous ones, because some of the things that this bill is meant to address are things that are practical, that things that they will just have to execute. You know, it's not going to take them so much for them to put these things into execution. Do you understand me? For example, this issue of our first problem, like I said earlier, before this program started, is our dependence on dollar, okay, on foreign exchange. And that's one of the major things that this bill is trying to address, to remove pressure on dollar. If that is done, you are going to immediately see the effect. For example, they're saying, okay, in the first place, even before this bill came, there's already an arrangement between NNPC, government, and Dangote Refinery for them to sell crude to him in Naira, and also they will buy products for him in Naira. See, our importations, our imports in Nigeria, the better part of it is made up of petroleum products importation. And so, you want to import PMS, AGO, and all those other things, you need FX. So if now there is now no need for you, as it were, to demand for FX for the purpose of buying PMS or diesel, that takes a lot of pressure off the naira. Do you understand? So if they now say, because right now Dangote refinery is going to be almost the sole supplier of petroleum products to Nigeria, let us hope that these other government refineries will also come very soon.
Well, the promise of September, and tomorrow is going to be the 30th of September.
I'm sure that's not going to work. They've always been shifting. So I'm more interested in Dangote refinery, which is already on. So imagine now that, they don't have to pay this man dollars to buy products. He's not paying dollars to buy crude from the country. That is a lot of ease on the dollar in Nigeria. And that consists a very big chunk of what will have, been chasing dollar for. Okay, so that is off. You're now again saying in this particular bill, all these agencies that have been collecting revenue in dollars, NIMASA particularly, and also MPA, are now saying, take your revenue. Yes, you can determine the revenue using dollar rate, but collect the revenue in naira. So meaning that all those people that relate with these bodies that ordinarily will have been chasing, looking for dollar to pay one charge or duty or the other, will now have to pay in naira. That also eases off pressure of the naira. Do you understand? So if you can take off pressure of the naira exchange rate will drop, meaning that the manufacturers that are now importing things would have some more fair rate, as it were, for which they can now import their products or their raw materials. So definitely that one does not require any serious rocket science for them to do. Once pressure reduces on dollar, some things will automatically come down, particularly this area of crude oil against refined products. That itself is sufficient for people to begin to feel the effect of government interventions like this. My own opinion.
Okay, all right. And now to Dr. Samuel Eshinake. When we talk about economic stabilization, a lot of people, what first comes to their mind is production. We are a consuming country, we are not a producing country. And if we look at the things that should have helped in production, we have unfavorable government policies, we have issue of energy, but these are the things that we think that might change. So with the moving of most Nigerians to Band A, with us having a functioning refinery, even if it is mostly private, that's a Dangote refinery now, do you think we might be seeing a change in production, that is for Nigeria as a country?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, when I spoke the other time, I said the economic problem facing Nigeria is beyond what monetary and fiscal policy can resolve. It is actually a structural problem. And that is, we have just mentioned one of them, the issue of production. We are more of a consuming nation than a producing country. All the multinational countries producing that were in this country, the little ones remaining, they have left in droves in the last 1 year or so. And what that means is that we'll continue to depend on importation. The economic environment, like you said, is not favorable for local or domestic production. The issue of corruption is there. I'm sorry to say, any economic policy you are putting in place in Nigeria without factoring in the problem of corruption, you will not achieve anything. I'll give you an instance. A senior civil servant, a permanent secretary, for instance, is on salary level 16, pay level 16 or so, and he has his children in foreign universities because of status. Their children no longer attend our universities. Their children no longer attend in public secondary schools or primary schools, but they attend foreign schools. Even where they have to attend schools in Nigeria here, those schools are the expensive private schools where they pay in dollars and the rest. Then tell me, how do you expect such a civil servant, a permanent secretary, to be able to survive on such a salary scale? These are issues that confront this country. So until we have to reorient ourselves and is that to agree within ourselves that if we do not change in attitude, this country is heading to collapse. You were talking about how to hold our government accountable. The only way to hold a government accountable is through elections. That when the tenure is complete and the government is seeking a re-election or a party is seeking a re-election, you assess the performance of such government, and the people through the ballot board will vote whether they want the continuation of that government or not. But how will you describe election today? Of course, our democracy, instead of being brought in, is collapsing. So we are finding ourselves in a pathetic situation that the ordinary Nigeria is helpless. The ordinary Nigeria is voiceless. All these policies being put in place, I'm not being pessimistic, but all these policies being put in place, they are just cosmetic in nature. They have not been able to alleviate the poverty. They have not been able to promote it. They talk about fiscal discipline. How do they promote fiscal discipline? About the waste we are hearing, about the presidential jets we are hearing, about the yachts we are hearing, about the delegation. We are just talking of the United Nations General Assembly. I read an article this morning about how extravagant government from Africa, they go to the United Nations General Assembly with convoys of cars, whereas governments or presidents of the advanced country, they go in buses, they go in small cars. So how do we explain the issue of fiscal discipline or fiscal consolidation? It is a matter of attitude. We have to change in our attitude from the government to those that are governed. Because in a situation where we now see government or politics as the only avenue to make wealth, is whether there is a policy for economic stabilization or there is a tax relief policy, the objective that they were meant to achieve will not be achievable. Thank you.
And on the United Nations General Assembly, I think it is worthy to note that Vice President Kashim Shettima is now back in Nigeria. So I am glad that he returned safely. I think that's one of the things to be happy for. We just have to be happy for the little things now. Okay, and back to this issue of the economic stabilization bill. If we are to look at, let me take the pharmaceutical sector now, for instance. We've been in trouble for a while now because some of the major companies that are manufacturing drugs in Nigeria left. But with the introduction of this bill, or when it will be formally introduced, if it passes the radar of the National Assembly, do you think that this might encourage these companies to come back, or it is just too late and then we should be looking for other people who would invest in the health sector? Because I think coming back might be risky to these people. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you very much. See, if you first ask yourself, why did those companies exit? Number one was because cost of production for them was becoming unbearable. And what caused that? Naira dollar rate. You understand? That was the major thing that it was like they could not even plan because of the uncertainty around the rate. Today it is 1,100, tomorrow is 1,300. So that that instability too is not good for their own business. They're not able to plan. And for manufacturing, you need to be able to plan ahead in terms of your raw material purchases and things like that. So the environment was not conducive for them to continue to operate in Nigeria. These people are businessmen. They don't love Nigeria as a country. That's the truth. They came in as businessmen. And when they saw that it was no longer, in quote, that profitable for them to begin to continue to operate, they exited. You understand? And I don't want to be emotional about these things. They have exited. Some people are even trying to come in also. I'm saying, I'm not being overly optimistic, but we have to recognize some moves that government is making. I'm passionate about this issue of trying to crash the dollar rate. If that is done, and it is done in a sustainable manner, so much that it will allow for businessmen, manufacturers to be able to plan for production, they're going to see these investors coming back, not just in the health sector, but also in other areas of the economy too. Because see, these guys are businessmen. Look, Africa today remains the focus of most of these investors. Europe is almost saturated in terms of return on investment. Africa is where the opportunities still are. So the fact that one particular company left does not say they can't come back again. They are just cold businessmen. If situations improve, they will come back. And that's the truth. And that's why it is important that government is able to back up whatever policies they're having with execution, so that people can begin to rebuild confidence in government and in our business environment. That's very key.
Okay, all right. So if we are to look at some of the things that this economic stabilization bill is seeking to address, that is the one of student loan.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, recently, some students of a particular higher institution in Nigeria were protesting, and then the chancellor told them to, the vice chancellor told them to go and apply for loan so they'll be able to pay the school fees. I found that comical because we are in a world that right now it is very difficult to even get food to eat on a daily basis, not to even talk of 3 square meals in a day. And if one gets loan, one is still required to pay back. And then we are also confronted with this issue of low employment. Underemployment is also an issue that we are also facing in the country. Although we know that part of these things that this bill is trying to do is make sure that these companies that they hire Nigerians and then they have a 3-year contract period with the people that they will be hiring to probably induce this rate of no employment that we are having in the country. So let's talk about this issue of student loan too. Do you think it's something that it's going to be good for us in the long run, or perhaps if things were better, we might not even be needing student loan to begin with?
Okay, again, thank you very much. You need to look at what's the general practice all over the world. Nigeria, maybe Africa generally, is still a place where, students even, or children, even at the age of 17, 18, are still under the, in quote, care of their parents. It's still the parents that are responsible for sending them to school, feeding them, and other. But in other countries, in other climes, by the time a child is 16, 17, 18, that child is seen as a full adult who can enter into contracts. One of such contracts is student loan contract. You understand? It is, most countries cannot afford to do full education, particularly at tertiary level of education. So, but what they do is they give these students opportunity to be able to take loans, which they will pay over a long time after they begin to work. So same way too in Nigeria here, I think it's a good move. It's a very good move. Like the doctor was trying to say about implementation, and I think they've started on a very good note. You understand? It's transparent enough to the best of my knowledge. It's transparent enough. You can go to the portal, you can apply, they will process. Once it is approved, they pay the fees directly to your school. But again, the Nigerian factor, even the so-called students who are trying to abuse that scheme, some person that the parents have already paid the fees is still going to apply, thinking that they will pay the money to him or her. The other day, one of them went on air or so on social media, was saying it's a scam. By the time they checked it, they realized that this particular person was trying to be smart by the how. The parent had already paid her school fees. She was now expecting that loan to be credited to her own personal account, which is not the way the thing is designed to work. So I seriously believe that when people allow these things to work the way it should work, it will benefit the students. It will also take away pressure from the parents, who also have a lot of other things to attend to beyond just children's education. They can now divert such funds to other things that will still benefit the family ultimately. So I really think that they should give that scheme a chance to survive. And I think it's a good move, by the government.
Okay, all right. Now to Dr. Ishinike. So the reason, I think part of the reason this bill is not so much well welcomed among Nigerians is because they believe that a lot of our leaders benefited from free education, and then we are having situations where the prices of school fees keeps on getting increased, and then now the government is even borrowing people money to pay their school fees because people believe that it's something that the federal government should have been able to do probably for free, and then this is not happening. Well, if we are to look at what our president is trying to do, this is something that is modeled after the USA's also student loan too. But it seems the attitude of Nigerians and loan is not so good. For them, you get loan, you pay back. But I think in Nigeria, the issue is we see loan as something that is not so palatable. Do you think that that might be the reason, also coupled with a lot of Nigerians feel that education should be something free in Nigeria?
Well, thank you. Thank you. From your question or from what you have just said, the Nigeria factor must come into place. Well, in as much as one want to praise the government for introducing the student loan, if that will be able to go around a reasonable number of students. But the issue of loan repayment is going to be a factor, because in Nigeria, loans from government or grants or aid from government are seen as their own share of the national cake. I'm very sure the student taking this loan today, they will sign any document given to them without looking at the implications of what the thing is, because they know that along the line, the system will collapse and nobody will be held responsible. So I'm afraid that the student loan scheme may not be sustainable over a long time, because repayment is going to be very poor. Like we have said, these students will graduate from school, they will not get paid employment, and they may also have the opportunity to self-employ themselves so as to earn income to repay this loan. We are praying so that whatever system of documentation the authority in charge of the student loan are putting in place today, we are praying that in 10 years' time, they will not say there's a glitch, whereby they will not even know the students or those categories of students that have taken the loan, or something has happened to the document, fire incident, and other things like that.
The orientation. We're talking about
we have to believe in this country.
Make this process not work.
We have to believe in this country, and we know it is only Nigerians that can make Nigeria work for us. These policies, if we do not believe in the policies and we do not put our trust into them, at the end of the day, there are always stories to tell, negative stories to tell. So we must show, the leaders must show leadership examples, and the followers must also show good examples. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. There's definitely still a lot to be discussed on this bill, but I think for now we should take a pause and wait for the National Assembly to scrutinize the bill, and let's see if it's going to be passed into law.